Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo.
Welcome back to Access Tech Live. I am Stephen Scott. Mark Aflalo is with me today. Now, it's Autism Awareness Month this month, and to talk about it and some of the ways technology supports those with Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD, we're joined by Jese Duran, Director at Sunshine Learning Centre in Ajax, Ontario. Good to have you with us, Jese.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, thank you. Now, before we get into the basics here, can you maybe first tell us about Sunshine Learning Centre and how it came to be?
So Sunshine Learning Center is an ABA center in Ajax. ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, which is essentially just a science and set of principles that we use, which can include a range of strategies such as breaking up skills into smaller parts, utilizing motivation, reinforcing close approximations, using specific structures and schedules, using visual supports, and so on. So we work primarily with children with autism, and we use these different evidence-based strategies to help them learn verbal skills, social skills, play skills, academic skills, and so on. So Sunshine was founded in 2010, so she's about 14 years now, and it started in a small center in Uxbridge and then moved to Ajax. And interesting story, I wasn't always the director. So before me was the amazing, incredible human being that is Alicia Chesler. And one day she sat me down and she asked me if I would like to take over, and I said yes. And so, yeah, I've been in this directory position for almost a year now, and things have been going great. And we're just working every day to try our best to help as many kids on the spectrum as possible.
Jese, for those people who aren't aware tuning in right now, what is ASD? How would you describe autism spectrum disorder?
Yeah, so autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning that it affects the brain and also the development. And it includes a variety of challenges, primarily with social communication and interaction, and restricted and repetitive movements and interests or behaviors. So because it's a spectrum, where those challenges lie varies on a range, right? So you can have a high number of challenges in one area and a low number of challenges in the other. It's going to look different for every kiddo on the spectrum. But some key indicators would be, an inability to pick up on social cues, abnormal eye contact, challenges with engaging in imaginative play, repeating words or phrases, insistence on sameness, strong attachment to specific schedules, peoples, or items, and strong sensory interest or sensory disinterest.
Being blind, Jese, I know about misconceptions people might have about me and my condition. What are some of the biggest misconceptions around autism spectrum disorder?
Yeah, so I always say, myself being a neurotypical, I obviously can't speak on the most true, genuine experiences. So, always best to talk to someone who is on the spectrum to really get a good description of those misconceptions. But I would say one thing that often happens when I tell people what I do for a living is I'm often met with a response that alludes to the idea that individuals with autism are difficult. People will say, oh, wow, that must be so hard what you do, or you must have so much patience. Good for you for doing that type of work. So number one, let's remember, like I said, it's a spectrum. Not all people with autism are the same. So not all individuals are going to have the same type of stereotypical characteristics that you might assume. And number two, aggressive or difficult or challenging behaviors and characteristics isn't even a symptom of autism. It's not in the diagnostic criteria at all. There are reasons why we see it more commonly in individuals with autism, but difficult or challenging characteristics is not innately a part of autism. And And so number 3, because as you can see, I'm passionate about this topic, is that I really hope that we can all just work together to change that narrative, right? Change the narrative that individuals with autism are difficult or challenging or exhausting. Does the job have its challenges? Yes, of course. And, it's not to negate that those who are in the field don't have, challenging moments. But are the people challenging themselves? Are they genetically born as challenging human beings? No, absolutely not.
Jesse, tech comes in all shapes and sizes, low tech, high tech. What are some of the tech enabled tools that the center uses in the treatment of its clients?
So we have, I would say, a wide range of tech devices that we use. I think in the lower form of tech, we use a lot of sensory types of devices. So things that might make certain noises or give light or give specific textures. Those are often of high interest for our kiddos. And I think they're great too for finding a way to connect and bond with the kiddos that we work with. So I don't know if you guys know the short films like Loop or Float. I watch them on repeat always, especially during this month, and just watching them on repeat and crying. But in one of the short films, Loop, it's about a young girl, and she has this device that every time she clicks it makes a sound and it goes whoop, 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 whoop. And the boy in the story is trying to find ways to connect with her and bond with her in terms of that. So I think using these devices together and finding ways to connect and bond really helps to build rapport and trust with our kiddos. It helps also to just build on play skills and social skills. And more so for social skills, we use a lot of video modeling. So video modeling is essentially just short videos and clips that demonstrate a specific skill that the kiddo is working to learn. So for example, showing them a skill of how to enter a group conversation, or showing them a video of how to zip up your zipper. Video models have a lot of research to back up their efficacy. They're very effective, and they're very common for everyone, right? We all are on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and we're all watching different types of video models every day that are teaching us different skills. So it's really effective because it can be created, recreated, paused, rewind, repeated, and so on. And then I would say for, the most popular type of tech device that's a higher level would be AAC iPad communication devices. So AAC is augmented and alternative communication. And within these types of iPad devices, there's different programs such as, some families might have heard of LAMP, ProLoco, Touch Chat. And so essentially these programs have a variety of different words, core words like I, go, want, yes, categories of preferred interests, preferred people, preferred places. And essentially for our kiddos who don't have vocal words, we use these iPad devices and programs to teach them how to communicate using the iPad, because communication is important. And I think, sometimes that's where frustration can come from, is if someone doesn't understand you and they can't hear you and you can't communicate with them at all, that's really, really frustrating. So what's a different way where we can teach them how to learn those communication skills?
It's interesting because when people talk about social media or they talk about using devices, it can often be talked about as a form of creating social isolation. We move away from other people and we're not around other people. We're isolating ourselves with our device. It sounds like for people with autism, and again, like you say, not everybody, because it's a spectrum, so it does depend on the individual, but it does sound like there's a common thread here that, and actually in some cases, these technologies can actually help autistic people become more social.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've definitely seen the level of effectiveness within our social programs specifically. So we'll use them a lot to demonstrate different skills, such as, like I said, entering in a group conversation, or how to recognize humor feedback, how to handle disagreements. Because one thing that, I would say in terms of how individuals with autism learn best, it's usually through structures and, things are very, clear and rule based. And so when you put this in a video format as well, it can be really useful for them to see, okay, step by step, this is how I do something. And this is something that I can, see someone demonstrate in real life as well. But when it's on a screen, it's more tangible, and it's something that, like I said, you can rewind, you can repeat, and so on.
Yeah, it's about reinforcing it sometimes in a little bit more of a structured way. At the same time, I got to ask you a quick question here before we let you go, which is about the balance, because it's important to balance that use of technology, I think, in terms of the treatment with some of the more traditional approaches to therapy, like face-to-face interaction, making sure, kids are in social situations to actually learn those. How do you balance that properly, especially when you're trying to work with kids to make sure that they're learning from it?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the balance is really important. And to be completely honest, other than for educational purposes, for the most part, we don't use iPads for leisure, unless it is something that we're using to help teach the kiddo how to handle not having access to the iPad for leisure all the time. So let's say we have a kiddo come in and, they're really tied to the iPad. They love playing on the iPad. They love spending all day on YouTube, but they have a really hard time when it gets taken away. We'll put in a program for that where we're working on communication, right? How do we, instead of getting upset and reactive, how do we communicate in a nicer way? How do we tolerate when we're told no? And how can we extend and, do other things until we get access to that iPad again? And so for the most part, otherwise, we're only using the iPad for educational purposes, because we do want our kiddos to have a more naturalistic and play-based way of teaching. And like you said, those face-to-face interactions are super, super valuable. In the same way how I described with where you connect with individuals through tech devices, you connect even better without tech sometimes, right? I once had a kiddo, and he loved making these noises where he would say, and when I started saying the same thing, and when I would say it in louder voices or high pitch, he got so excited. And I think, when kiddos see that, oh, you hear me, you understand me, you're trying to bond with me, and you're trying to see the world in the same way that I'm seeing it, that makes a very meaningful connection. So those face-to-face interactions that are more natural and holistic are really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds so valuable. Breaking through, it just sounds like a great way to connect. Jesse, thank you so much for being with us today. Tell us how we can follow you. Tell us more about how people can find you and follow your centre.
Yes, of course. So, like I said, we're based in Ajax, and we have our website where you can reach us at sunshinelearningcenter.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Sunshine Learning Center Inc., INC, or TikTok at Sunshine Learning Center with the letter C, and on Facebook at Sunshine Learning Center. And for any questions, check out our website or send us an email at info@sunshinelearningcenter.com.
Thank you, Jesse. When we come back, Robin Christopherson is with us from AbilityNet. He has a unique opinion on some of these AI devices we talked about a bit earlier, specifically that Rabbit R1. Stick around.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back.